Gabe, what do you like the best about homeschooling?
Reading by myself.
So my kids' age range is from 10 months to 8 years old. I know a lot of parents, when it comes to unschooling and reading, feel that pressure of my child has to read. It's such an important skill. It's how you learn and gain access to every other piece of knowledge in the world. You have to know how to read. My oldest is 8 and he really loves to read. What we'll do is, if I want Gabe to read a book, I don't give him the book and say, hey, read this. What I do is I'll just open it up and we'll read the first chapter together. And then he wants to know what happens after that, because usually the first chapter kind of tries to hook you in. And I go, you know what, if you want to read ahead, you can take this. And so then he'll take it to his room and read. A lot of his reading is done at night because he's kind of a night owl. If he is quiet, he's not keeping up his brothers, and he's reading, I think that's great. What are your favorite books?
Michael Ray.
Yeah?
Percy Jackson.
Oh yeah, those are good ones. What kind of things do you like reading about that aren't fiction books?
Story of the World.
Oh yeah, Story of the World is fun.
1,000 and more science facts.
Yeah, that's a good one. While my oldest is loving reading, he's obsessed, he's excited, my 6-year-old is not excited about reading. He is kind of at the level where he's sounding out words and he can do it, but he's just not excited about it. For me, I don't want it to be a negative thing for him. The most important thing for me is that they love learning. And if it becomes a negative thing, then he's not going to love it. In the evenings, we come together and we read. And I'll read out loud to him with the book that he's chosen. But often, the books that he's chosen, he can read. He just doesn't want to. So I'll say, hey, why don't you read this page to me? Or why don't you read this sentence to me? Or I'll just stop and let him fill in the blanks. He's really good about filling in the blanks or sounding out a word, or if he doesn't want to read that page, I'll say, oh yeah, I'll read that page. Why don't you read another page? Which page do you want to read? And we'll leaf through and he'll say, oh, I want to read this page. And so it comes down to choice. It's more important to me that they love to learn, that they learn specific things.
My kids range in age from 8 years old up to 14. Teaching a kid to read was the hardest thing, because you were teaching them the most abstract concept and you're trying to make it concrete. It did not make sense for my third daughter at all. She had no idea why these drawings, these squiggly lines, made sounds. She's like, what are you talking about? That is a line on a paper. Those are lines put together. And she was a little girl that would open up her book and she would read all the time. She would just memorize and she would read that way. I'm sure a lot of you are kind of smiling because you probably have a kid like this that just memorizes it and reads and is like, I know how to read. Then you try to teach them to read and they're like, no. That's not what this page says. I'm gonna tell you what it says. And then you're like, how do I teach a kid who already is convinced they already know everything something new? How do I do that? I actually was praying like crazy to be able to get through to her and to be able to help her understand the symbols of the letters and the sounds and how you put them together to form words. I tried sand, having her draw in the sand the letters. That didn't work. I tried games, flashcards, songs, picture references like A is for apple and things like that. That didn't work. So one day I'm watching When Calls the Heart, one of my favorite Hallmark TV shows. It's about a teacher, and she has a student who is very intelligent, and he's older, but he can't read. He can't read cat. And there's just a disconnect in his brain. His knowledge of the lines, the drawing of an A, his knowledge of the sound of the A, not connecting. It's not coming together. And so on the show, she thought, how can I help him figure this out? What she ended up doing was using dough to form the letter, and at the end of the letter, for apple, or for A, she would create an apple at the end out of the dough. She was making the abstract concrete. Well, I thought, what are the chances that this might work for my daughter? I call all the kids together. I put out the clay. All right, kids, we're making letters. And then you have to make a little picture or something that starts with that letter sound. And so I had to help Penelope because, again, she wasn't really connecting what we were doing. She was already like 6, and I had been trying to teach her letters and sounds and how they make words for quite a while. And I was really starting to lose hope. So we create these clay letters, and she starts touching them and starts looking at them. And she takes each one, and she starts to understand. And all of a sudden, it made sense. She was so frustrated before. That's why she would just pretend she could read. And she didn't want to feel like she was less than anyone else. And even though I had always encouraged her and been patient with her, within herself, she felt like she was lacking. But once that connection was made, she flew.
I used to be a big reader. I've always loved it, always loved getting into a good book. I made a goal this year to do more physical reading of books, and so now we do our family read with some sort of a classic book that we do a read aloud. Sometimes they'll draw, sometimes they'll just listen, and we do that in different places and try to make it a really enjoyable experience.
The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
I've always known I wanted to read this to you eventually. It's one of my favorites. Then said King Peter, for they talked in quite a different style now, having been kings and queens for so long. Since I made this goal to read more physical books, I have, and Gavin is now reading chapter books. 7 minutes is what we've decided for now, where he will read his chapter book and I'm reading my chapter book. We got him into this really great series. It's called The Imagination Station. I'll let him tell you about that though.
I've been reading this Focus on the Family Adventures in Ozzy, The Imagination Station, Book 5, Shut-In with the Shepherd, written by Marlene Herriking and illustrated probably by Brock Eastman. These guys can go back in time. So they go to this guy named Mr. Whitaker, and he sends them to these different places. And sometimes they go like 1,000 years. Sometimes they only go like 100 years. They try getting a lot of treasures. And on this one, they have it's a David and Goliath one. There's David and Goliath.
It's so good. It's like the Magic Tree House books, but it's Christian. And so there are biblical principles throughout it. And there's 25 books in the series, thank goodness, because we're on book 5 and I'm just glad I don't have to find a new series anytime soon. I'll take recommendations though when that time comes.
20 more books to go.
It's improved his love of learning when he sees that I'm reading too. It's so rewarding and it makes homeschool so enjoyable.